Hey, everyone in. Let's go. Huddle up on 3. 1, 2, 3. Huddle up.
No one, and I mean no one, comes into our house and pushes us around. This is your game now, gentlemen.
Two minutes to go, and a puck up Dan Holtby watching a bad bounce out of the corner, and a shot and a save made by Braden Holtby. Oh my! As Alex Tuck was robbed on a puck that came bouncing out of the corner, and Washington by a whisker. Still on top with 1:59 to go. My goodness, Braden Holtby. Off the face-off, the Capitals have won it. The capital of the country is the capital of the hockey playoffs.
Many doubted we'd ever see it. But here it is. The return to glory.
And now, welcome everyone to the Huddle Up Podcast.
We did it our way, baby! We did it! We did it! We did it!
Welcome everyone, Huddle Up Podcast. It's been a few weeks, but we are back with you, and it looks a little bit different. But we're trying out something new here, and we hope you're glad to be with us. We're glad to be back with you. It is Tuesday night, September the 8th. We've got tons to talk about this week, including football is back and hockey is down to just one bubble. But make sure you check us out on social media at Huddle Up Podcast and our home network, of course, NGSC Sports at ngsdsports.com. We also stream daily at leibsports.com, Leeib sports.com. And you can now catch the show on YouTube if you go to tinyurl.Huddle Up Pod YouTube. Make sure you subscribe there. Make sure you are subscribed to our podcast feed, both the full show and the Red Zone podcast, which features our clips, best clips of the week. And we are glad. No Matt tonight. Dave may be joining us. Otherwise, it is just me and the Sean Shine State. Although not too sunny tonight, is it, Sean?
No. Sun was on its way down, and then the storm clouds decided it was going to get darker a lot sooner than the sun had planned on. So we got some pretty good wind and rain howling out there right now, but it's dry in here. And for now, we still have an internet connection, so we're live with you from St. Petersburg.
Well, perfect, and hopefully we don't lose you. And if you are following along in the live video, as it says here, make sure you give it a like and a share, get as many people in here as possible. We'd appreciate that. And also comment along with the show wherever you are watching, and let us know where you're watching, because for the first time we are on Twitter, which is on Periscope, we are on Facebook, and we are on YouTube. So if you're following along on any of those, please make sure you let us know where you are watching us tonight. We'd appreciate that. All right, Sean, let's get this thing underway here. And obviously the big thing with football getting underway, really getting underway this weekend. There was a few college games this past weekend and yesterday. But the meat of the action gets underway this weekend with both the NFL and college football. And the big question is, like, what's it going to look and feel like? We've obviously seen the hockey bubble. We've seen the basketball bubble. We've seen golf and tennis and NASCAR, and we've seen Major League Baseball, and they've filled in the stands with the cardboard cutouts. Each league has pumped in crowd noise to some degree. And I know, with college football, there's going to be some crowds in some places, no crowds in others, socially distanced crowds. I know Notre Dame is allowing up to, I think it's like 18,000 socially distanced. The marching band will be there, socially distant, so they're probably in the one end zone or something. So it's definitely going to look and feel different. But for me, with hockey, with basketball, with NASCAR, with golf, the action once the games get underway, even with baseball, I think all of these leagues have done a very good job at presenting sports as sports. And when it comes down to game time and the puck drops or the first pitch and all of that, by the time the game gets going, I really haven't found myself, really realizing the crowd's not there. Football may be different though.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think the big difference is with hockey and being the smaller playing surface and being able to kind of control your environment indoors and really take time to set up that one bubble for coverage. I think you really have an opportunity to kind of streamline the angles. There's very few gameplay angles, I felt like, in hockey. Obviously, there's no one right behind the glass, but I think you're so close to the action with those camera angles. And I'm sure the NFL is going to try their best to work on it. I just I think that smaller gameplay surface and less players, and the ability to cut in on the bench and have it be close, and it's much easier to cut the crowd out. Essentially, and just kind of pump that sound in. But with football, with the big stadiums, especially when you talk college, you're going to hear the band, you're going to hear what fans may or may not be there, and people are going to want to see it. So you're definitely going to be pulling out. And then my question is, if they are scattered, is that going to look? I don't know what that's going to look like I can't picture it. Obviously with baseball, they have like the cutouts and things, which I thought was brilliant. I thought that was really well played. But the NFL, I think you're going to see a lot of holes, and it's going to seem quieter. I hope that they do they don't try too much with like moving cameras above the field or anything like that. But I don't know. I mean, I'm excited to watch football. I just, is it going to feel different? I think more so than the other sports.
Yeah, and I know because like the Eagles, there's going to be no crowd, and I know they were selling, they were selling the cardboard cutouts. You can buy the cutouts there. I know that like the Chiefs, for example, have announced that like a limited crowd. I think the Broncos announced a limited crowd. My idiot owner was still as of like last week was still kind of hinting that he wants a full normal crowd, which I mean in Texas it wouldn't really surprise me that much if there's a full Cowboys fan crowd in attendance at AT&T Stadium. But we won't see that this week. The Cowboys are in Los Angeles at the $1 billion SoFi Stadium, which will be completely empty. But to provide some interesting looks nonetheless.
They should just fill it with another $1 billion.
Right. I mean,
so we know what that looks like.
They know what it looks like, and they probably have the $1 billion at this point. And I know, like this past weekend, I was watching a little bit of the. It was like Army and Middle Tennessee State, and like the cadets were in the crowd, but I don't think there was any actual fans. So that felt kind of normal-ish. Yeah. Was a Marshall in the Eastern Westville, Kentucky or something. There was some
West
people
Louisville,
there.
Chattanooga,
some form of crowd was there. And it was weird and kind of scary because I'm like, should there really be people? But I guess you're outside. They were kind of spread apart. And I know NASCAR has been doing it for a while. But I mean, we're talking NASCAR stadiums that have capacity of like 100,000. You're putting in like 20. You're talking some of these football stadiums have 20, 30,000 capacity. Are you only putting in a couple of hundred? I don't know. But it's going to be interesting. Like I said, I know Notre Dame hosts Duke this weekend. There's going to be around 18,000. It's the band, students, and family of the players. So that's going to look weird for Notre Dame Stadium because, people can love or hate Notre Dame all you want. But one thing Notre Dame does is they never play in front of not a capacity crowd. So that is certainly going to be something new something new for us. But let's go ahead, because the college football landscape is going to be very different this year. As of now, and again, this is September 8th. No Big Ten.
Nope.
And no Pac-12. Our Fighting Irish are no longer independent for this season. They are part of the ACC. The ACC and the AAC are not doing divisions within their conference this year. So, like the Big 12, they will be number 1 versus number 2 for the championship. I saw, and I know I sent it to you and Dad, the ACC logo painted on the field at Notre Dame Stadium.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It felt dirty. It feels weird. It's probably going to look even weirder because there's going to probably be ACC patches on the Notre Dame jerseys this year.
Yeah.
Which is just, it's going to feel strange. But then again, what hasn't in the year 2020? So let's go ahead. Like I said, no Big Ten champions. So let's go ahead then to the ACC, and I'm going to go right along the lines with the ACC prediction, or like the expert predictions for the ACC this year, and go Clemson as my number 1. Notre Dame is number 2. Looking over the rest of that conference, I don't see any real viable options out of those two, because with the 10-game schedule, looking down over it, even if Notre Dame or Clemson hiccup somewhere else, they play each other still in November at Notre Dame Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see any other team competing for the ACC. So I got to give Clemson the edge. I think, at least what we know now, they are probably the better team. So I'll give them the number 1 edge, but I'll go Clemson 1 and Notre Dame 2.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of with you. I mean, obviously, as far as the two kind of proverbial teams in there, I mean, those are the two. And, the way, obviously, they've set up the interconference schedule, everybody plays, at least they tried to get the big games on. The ACC doesn't really have anybody else to me either that I think will challenge for that 1-2. But they have a lot of sneaky, teams like Pitt and North Carolina, probably not NC State, but there's some sneaky ones in there. But UCF's not, a USF is in there. Is that the one that's in there? That's Notre Dame's non-conference game.
Yeah, it's Notre Dame's
USF.
non-conference game, USF.
Which is a sneaky game for Notre Dame. But
yeah, that one worries me a little.
It's a little scary. At least it's at home. But I don't know. I see a lot of snares where Notre Dame's able to upset Clemson, especially with it being at home. It's just kind of one of those. I think a lot of those scenarios are Notre Dame loses one and needs the game to stay alive. But I think if both teams are going to roll through unbeaten, which is probably the case based on defense and running games, I think you're right. I think Clemson's going to edge them, hopefully close, and then and you get the two teams both kind of with a shot at being in that playoff picture. Assuming it's the loser's only loss, because that's probably going to be your marquee game for the year, depending how other conferences finish. Obviously, the SEC's got a couple that we can talk about when we get there, but that could be the marquee kind of 1-2-ish matchup of the year.
Yeah, and obviously we'll touch on the SEC, but because the ACC is pretty much like we said, I think Notre Dame, Clemson, and kind of everybody else. There's some other good teams. I don't want to just automatically say that there's no other good teams, because there are, that could potentially hiccup Notre Dame or Clemson, because I think Clemson had a few guys that opted out. And again, as will be the case with all conferences, you're going to have that situation of a potential COVID-19 positive players, some sort of outbreak. I mean, I think, what was it, Auburn or Georgia, I think had, at least I think it was Auburn last week, had multiple players. I want to say it was upwards of 40 between positives and contacts that had to sit out, or Tennessee. It was either Tennessee or Auburn, somebody in the SEC. Shocking. But so you're going to have that play into things as well. But the SEC is going to have multiple teams that are going to play each other, potentially knock each other out, that we've seen in other years. So I think the Notre Dame Clemson, if they don't get tripped up anywhere else, could be probably the only time, and we'll get to our playoff predictions, where you have the two teams that played each other in November, the loser still gets in to a championship game, and then could potentially see each other a third time in the college football playoff. But we'll get to that. Speaking of the SEC, this one's still West versus East, and for me, I have Georgia coming out of the West. I think that one still fairly easy, and then the East, as it has for the last couple of years, is going to come down to Alabama and LSU. LSU, of course, losing Joe Burrow, losing a number of players, and having some players opt out this year, based on the potential for the disrupted season and the potential for getting sick, getting hurt, and just looking ahead towards the draft for next year. So I actually have Alabama edging out LSU coming out of the East, just because I think that, based on what we know, and that they are kind of operating closer to full volume, that Alabama's the stud there.
Yeah, I mean, when you're looking at the West there, Alabama, they're obviously going to be the kind of proverbial pick. I'm not as high on LSU. I think, and I've been kind of researching around, and it sounds like there are some writers out there that agree with me. I think the fall off from Joe Burrow leaving and that kind of lasting high from last year's national title, a little bit change in schedule, the way things are looking. Like you said, teams down there, kind of swapping viruses around. I don't know. It seems to be the hotbed down here in the southeast part of the country. And Georgia kind of benefits, because I think with a lot of the power being in the West, Georgia plays a lot less of them and kind of gets that easier road. And in the shortened schedule, I don't know how that helps them come playoff time. Obviously, they'll have a SEC title game, but they may need to win that to have a shot at getting in. But I don't really see anybody on that schedule. I mean, unless somebody manages like an LSU to have one big game and knock them off, or maybe something in the Iron Bowl. You get that one game that kind of knocks you down a peg. It may not even affect it. They lose one game, but win the title game, they're probably still in. So Alabama at this point, the one pro they have going on is if they do have an off year, people may not notice. Because people have such high expectations going in, and even if they struggle in some games, as long as they're winning, people are just going to assume that other teams played up to their level. And we've seen that in the SEC here for years with them and with other teams. And I don't know what that means. I'm not discrediting Alabama or Nick Saban. I'm just saying, if they did have a bad year coming, would we even notice, short of them getting knocked off 2 or 3 times throughout the year? But I don't see anybody beating them this year. Shortened season, they should be able to just hammer right through them. If there's a team that knows how to win a bunch in a row, it's them. And I don't know if you want me to go into a title game there, but I have them playing against Georgia in that title game. And
who was that? Alabama,
Georgia, yeah, in that title game. And I don't think LSU is going to be real close in the West. I think it's pretty much a dead, 2 teams running away with each half down there.
Yeah. It's been a fairly easy conference to predict over the last couple of years, and until somebody else jumps up and grabs that ring, it's going to be one and the same. Again, no Pac-12, so we can jump right over the Pac-12. They, I think, are still maybe hoping to play in the winter, spring. I have no idea, or maybe they're just going to write everything off.
Yeah.
I don't see how playing in January is going to do anything beneficial for anybody, because your playoffs are still going to be determined as normal. So then let's jump to the Big 12, and again, I think this one, to me, fairly easy. I think you're looking at Oklahoma and you're looking at Texas. I mean, you can always get some of those weird games, like when you get into the schedule, and obviously this year again, conference only schedule. You're going to see the Oklahoma State, stuff like that. Somebody might trip somebody up somewhere. But until I see it happen, I'm going to go Oklahoma and Texas. Oklahoma 1, Texas 2. You get the Red River rivalry. Easy for me to say after drinking a couple. I think you're gonna sit there and you're going to see those teams, and it's going to play out. I think Oklahoma is the best team, but I have Oklahoma 1, Texas 2.
Yeah, I mean, you got a lot of good teams out there. I don't know how many of them are great. I did want to add, I forgot to point out in the SEC, a team that I think is kind of sneaky in there. Are they going to challenge Alabama? Probably not. Would be Texas A&M. I think that they had a pretty solid defensive unit last year. I think they have a lot of speed on offense, and it's one of those teams that, because of the low expectations or the low hype, is going to pretty much need to run the table. But with it being a conference record, if you can snag one in Tuscaloosa, you got as good a chance to play Georgia as anybody else. So that would be my sneaky team. But in the Big 12, beyond, like, there's some players I like. Oklahoma State's got a running back that's going to challenge for the Heisman, and they have a lot of speed there. Baylor's got a lot of great defensive speed. But you're right. I just don't see a lot. I think Texas has the skill set to beat Oklahoma. I think you could see them win the Red River Shootout, but I think there's a chance that they win that Red River Shootout, still lose over the course of the season another time or two, and end up behind Oklahoma. But with that title game scenario, those two could end up playing, right? Those two in the title game.
The Big 12. I mean, every year is number 1 versus number 2.
That's what I thought. Yeah, so I think maybe they, I don't know. I mean, if Texas loses to Oklahoma, the nice thing for them is people expect them to lose to Oklahoma. You could just kind of go on a run after the fact. But I think you're going to go Oklahoma 1, you're going to go Texas 2. I would secretly like to see Texas lose the regular season matchup, only for Texas to win
on the comeback.
The comeback. That would be my kind of dream match. I would love to see Texas football relevant enough. The downside is for the Big 12, if Texas does get that win, I don't know if they're going to have the the resume to get into that playoff. I think they would have to be undefeated out of the Big 12, whoever comes out of there, probably.
And it's going to be hard to tell this year because you're not going to have.
You don't have all those non-conference.
You're not going to have Ohio State or Wisconsin. You're not going to have a Big Ten winner up there near the top. You're not going to. I mean, the Pac-12 has tried to make their way towards the playoff a couple of times. I think Washington got in the one year. You're not going to have them this year. So maybe that one loss Big 12 team. But I think it's got to be Texas. They can't lose big to Oklahoma if they're going to lose to them and then get them on the comeback. Oklahoma, I think, could survive a loss in the regular season to get them in the title game because Oklahoma is so high to start the year.
Yeah, and that quarterback, I think they're starting a freshman this year.
Yeah,
supposedly kind of in the same build and make as a Baker Mayfield or that kind of but that offense has always been a plug and play as long as they have the right skill set. But yeah, I think we're on the same page. I'm tired of agreeing with you on everything, but we're picking conferences that, just for kicks, maybe I'll go Texas 1, Oklahoma 2. just to really mix it up,
Oh, well, we got a question here. We got a question from Jason. He asks, which conference would you most like to see Notre Dame join? And the easy answer, Jason, is none.
Yeah, that's the answer.
That's the correct answer.
That's not the question, though.
Yeah. If I had to pick one, I mean, I guess I would probably keep it in the ACC. I mean, all of their other sports are there, but I mean, growing up, Notre Dame played a lot more. Before they had the ACC tie-in, they had a lot of games with Michigan and Michigan State and Purdue and Northwestern sprinkled in from time to time, and an occasional matchup from the mid 90s with Ohio State, which I think Ohio State, they had signed that deal in like 2004, 2005 for like the 2022, 2023.
That was a rough 2 years.
That's not too far away, so
No.
a couple of years down the road, we do have Ohio State waiting in the wings. So maybe the Big Ten, if Notre Dame were to join, because you get some of those fun Midwestern rivalries back in the mix, and like Notre Dame, Nebraska, what could be some fun. But the actual answer is none. But Sean, I'll feed the question to you as well.
Yeah, I think certainly not the Big 12. I think it'd be fun for the first few years while your defensive players were still there. But it's so hard to recruit defensive players in the Big 12 because all the teams focus on offense so much. Defenders are afraid to play there. I don't know. Like you said, ACC would be cool. I think Big Ten's probably your pick, even though I have kind of qualms about that because of, historically in the past, Notre Dame at times had asked to join that conference, was told no. And now I think there's a standoff and it's never going to happen. But for that same rivalry reason, you didn't mention even in Indiana, you have the in-state rivalries with them and Purdue. Notre Dame has a trophy they play for with Michigan State, and Purdue.
They have one with Michigan. They have one with Purdue. They have one with
Michigan. I don't know if that's 4-1. I know Michigan State's is the mega.
The funny thing about Notre Dame, Michigan, and everybody ties them so much together. Obviously, the two winningest programs in college football history. The stadium, Notre Dame Stadium. Now they do look a little bit different now as both stadiums were renovated and added on to with the boxes and whatnot. But the original footprint of the two, Notre Dame took the design of the big house and made their own. But if you look at Notre Dame, it only played Michigan. I think it's only 20 something times in the history of those two schools.
And it might be selfish to want them to play Penn State, having grown up in that area and knowing that series is still tied all time. But I still don't think I picked the Big Ten. I think I got a lot of issues there. I think the way Notre Dame's built their program and with a lot of speed on offense, possession, running the ball, and, kind of quick pass rushing and speed on defense, I think the Pac-12 could be really fun. And logistically, travel-wise, does it make sense? No. But I think it'd be a fun one to do. It'd be a kind of chance to, challenge for a conference title every year, but you're still going to get some marquee matchups at times and a chance to play for a national title every year. And you get that rivalry with USC still hanging in there, can play them every year. So
yeah, and that's going to be something weird this year. No USC Notre Dame, no Stanford Notre Dame, no Navy Notre Dame. The first time in our lifetime that Navy and Notre Dame have not played in a season. So, and that game was supposed to be last weekend in Ireland. But then obviously back in the spring that had shifted. They were going to play it in Annapolis, which Notre Dame's never played at the Naval Academy.
Interesting.
And then with the conference only thing, and they couldn't get it worked out. So no Notre Dame Navy, which is going to feel weird in itself. So let's go to the AAC, the American Athletic Conference, where UCF has kind of reigned supreme for the past couple of years. I have them coming in at number 2. I actually have Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati has been really putting their program back together post Brian Kelly, and they've been silently getting better. So I like Cincinnati coming in at number 1 and UCF coming in at number 2 in the AAC.
All right. Well, because I have like 3 teams pretty much at the top of this one, I'm just going to go a different route. Defense usually wins championships, so I do like Cincinnati's defensive unit there, but I think UCF falls. They're going to drop it. I'm going to be in the top 2. I like Cincinnati and I like Memphis. Memphis, of course, would be winning probably more with their offense than with their defense. But I think Memphis is a team that's, people talk about UCF kind of running wild in there. I think Memphis has had some big wins over the last few years. And I think that they're kind of poised to make that run. They're going to have to string some together like they haven't been able to do. but maybe this is the year to do it. So, you get that win against Cincinnati. That's going to be a real big jump for them. And I'll take Memphis out of there. And I think if they can run the table with the offensive numbers that they put up and get out of that conference unscathed, which is unlikely, but maybe even with just one loss to one of those other two teams, I think Memphis, depending how things shake up with wins and losses, could be one of those two bubble teams or challenging to get in there to that 4. I think I'm going to have them right there in the top 6 when the year's all done.
Wow. Okay. So that you had Memphis, and who else was the other team for the championship?
I guess Memphis, Cincinnati, since I officially on record said that UCF would get bumped out. So I guess Cincinnati's in there with them.
All right, there we go. All right, let's crystal ball it a little bit here. We're going to look at the Heisman Trophy and then predict our top 4 teams that will make it to the college football playoff. I have Trevor Lawrence, and I know it's probably cheap and easy, but
Who?
The quarterback from Clemson, Trevor Lawrence as your Heisman Trophy winner. I predicted him last year, ended up not winning the Heisman, but with everything else going on, no Ohio State in the mix, and nobody coming out of the Pac-12, no running back from Wisconsin, because I figure they just probably have a great running back. So I think Trevor Lawrence, LSU, I think is going to hurt a little bit. And again, when we're talking about the Heisman Trophy, it has kind of become the best player on the best team, and I think that's for the regular season going to be Clemson.
Yeah, and Lawrence is a hard one to argue against, and I think as long as he has a year anything like what he's had before, it's going to take a pretty dynamite season somewhere else. Now, having said that, if a team like Notre Dame winds up running the table, including a win against Clemson, arguably twice, I think, even if they exchange with Notre Dame and you got guys like Ian Book that has a chance to make a name. Now he's lost some pieces at wide receiver. There's plenty of speed on that team to kind of back it up. But you have a lot of those question marks. I think the quarterback from Oklahoma, what's his name? Rattler, which I really like.
Great name for a Big 12.
Great name for the Big 12. Yeah.
Rattler.
Especially in that Red Rivers Rattler.
Beautiful.
It's
would have been better at Texas, but
Rattler, Texas Rattlesnake would have been spot on. I think he's going to challenge for it, and I think you're going to have a running back or two. It's going to be real easy to see what running backs are able to do for the team, but I don't like to agree with you on a Heisman, but I'm not gonna take a stab here. I'm going to say that he does win, but I think some of your finalists are going to surprise you, and they may even be from smaller schools like a Memphis that sneaks in, or some of that. You're going to have some, shortened season gives some of these smaller schools a chance to really let their players fly. They don't have to play those out of conference games and get beat around by a bigger team. I think I'm going to go with that. I'll stick with you.
All right. So the college football playoff bowl games this year are the Rose Bowl and the Sugar Bowl. They don't designate beforehand which one hosts the 1 versus 4 and which one hosts the 2 versus 3. So I'm just gonna go and I'm gonna put the 1 versus 4 matchup with the Rose Bowl, the 2 versus 3 with the Sugar Bowl. So I'm gonna have Clemson as my number 1. I think they're gonna get through the year. Probably I'm gonna have Notre Dame beating them in November at Notre Dame Stadium, but I'm going to Clemson come back and win in the ACC title game, which, because where Notre Dame will be a strong enough win to vault them back up to number 1. I have Oklahoma at 4, and then in my Sugar Bowl, I have Alabama at 2. Notre Dame coming off the loss in the ACC title game as my number 3. So Clemson, Oklahoma in the Rose Bowl, Bama versus Notre Dame in the Sugar Bowl, which is already giving my hand a tremble, because the last time Notre Dame met Alabama in that stadium, it did not. I think it was. Oh no, that was at the Orange Bowl. But either way, it still kind of makes my hand shake a little. So who is your college football playoff?
So you had what? You had Clemson, Oklahoma.
Yes, and then Bama, Notre Dame.
Well, that's embarrassing. I feel I should mix this up. No, mine are in a slightly different order, however. They are slightly different order. I had I didn't know because I was back and forth on Oklahoma and Georgia. I'm like, do I put? But if I go Georgia, I'm going to have two ACC, two
SEC, which is entirely possible.
Yeah. And I was like, is that going to be like but that involves all of them being up near the top 4. And then how does Oklahoma get knocked out? That kind of thing. But I have Texas beating Oklahoma. So I don't know how I feel about that. Really mix my things up. But I'm going to do my crazy one. I'm going to take Georgia in there. I'm going to throw them in. I have my 2-3 would be Clemson at 2, Georgia at 3, playing at that one. And my 1-4 would be Alabama, Notre Dame. I think with their the Clemson Notre Dame exchanging losses, throwing that around, I think doesn't allow either of them to vault to 1. I think Alabama's going to run that show. Like I said, hopefully they wind up losing to like a Georgia somewhere along the line, but probably not going to happen. So I'm going to go with I'm going to go with them at 1, Notre Dame at 4. Did you have the progression happening, or just naming your 1 through 4?
No, I played it out. I have Clemson and Alabama in the national title game. I have Clemson winning fairly soundly against Oklahoma. I have Notre Dame and Alabama being close, which that worked well last time. But I have Clemson as your national champion. I still think they're your best team in college football until proven otherwise. So I'm going to go easy on this one.
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to take Notre Dame real bad. I really do. I want to. I don't want to
speak it into existence but how I would love it if they
would have to beat Alabama with a running game. It's pretty much, and I don't know if I like the style to beat Alabama. So I'll take Alabama. Probably not close, but we're going to call it close for the record. And I too will take Clemson for the same title game, Clemson, Alabama. I think it's a hair closer. I don't think Alabama wants to get embarrassed out there.
Like last time.
Man, I think Alabama's going to give them a run. I think it's lower scoring. I think Alabama comes in with a game plan to neutralize Lawrence, which is easier said than done. And it's a defensive battle. But I think in that defensive battle, Clemson's defense just reigns supreme, like they do in the swamp. And I think I take Clemson in a nail biter and a much better rated and remembered national title game. But I got Clemson repeating too, and I hate to agree with you on that. There's not enough surprise teams. I was going to throw Memphis in my 4. I have Memphis and Texas in my. We'll put those as my last 6, not Oklahoma. Oklahoma falls to Texas.
Very good. Yeah, and again, it's because it's one of those situations where you don't have that USC Clemson matchup. You don't have that Alabama. You don't have those Florida States that are these out of conference sometimes rivalry games that result in a shocking loss. You have these conference matchups, which as we've seen over the years, the Big 12 is kind of ruled by 2 dogs. The SEC is ruled by 3, but really just one of them. The ACC has been ruled by 1, but now you have the Notre Dame in the mix. So I feel like it's without until proven otherwise. It is easier to just go with what we know.
Right, and just to be clear, because you didn't ask me to predict that 5-6 fall off, that Big 12 is the slash. It's whoever winds up winning. I think I predicted Oklahoma, but I said Texas had a shot. Whoever that slash is your 5, and Memphis coming out of that AAC. Your
solid.
6.
All right, so let's transition to the NFL. Obviously, just 2 days away now from the official start of the NFL season. But I was listening to CBS Sports Radio the other night, and the question was, on a scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you? How excited are you for the NFL season? For me, I was kind of like, it doesn't even feel like football season. I'm sitting here on my other screen, the Stanley Cup playoffs, and we're talking about the start of football in a couple of days. Obviously, this whole year has been ass over tea kettle, and here we are. So I'm going. I was at like a 2, maybe a 3, and then I had 2 fantasy drafts on Sunday. So I'm like, maybe now it's like it's worked up to like, a 6.5. I'm sure like come Sunday, I'm going to be a lot more into it. Because like Thursday nights I have the wrestling podcast, so like I don't usually watch Thursday night football, but I'm sure come Saturday I'm gonna watch Notre Dame, and it comes Sunday I'm gonna have the Red Zone channel. It's gonna feel like an NFL Sunday. I can at least distract myself from the fire that the world has become outside. Just get excited about football. So I'm sure come Sunday I'll be retched up to like a 10 or 11 out of 10. But John, how excited are you that 2 days from now is our first NFL Thursday? This coming Sunday is our first NFL Sunday of the season.
10.
Solid 10.
A solid 10.
10.
I don't know what it's.
10.
It's a 10. It's a 10. It's a 10 out of 10. It's an 11. I've turned it up to 11. We may have a different look to football. I don't know what the crowd's going to look like. I don't know what the mics are going to sound like. I don't know how many officials are going to be on the field. But the one thing the XFL taught me was I can get into pretty much any football game as long as it's somewhat competitive. I don't care who's playing. So half the teams want to get COVID outbreaks and bring in replacement players. Bring it on. I'll sign new fantasy players.
Keanu Reeves at quarterback, baby.
I don't care who it is. Yeah, but I just I was kind of with you a few weeks ago. I was like, it's never going to happen, and I think I predicted a no for sure on football, and I was clearly wrong. But yeah, I don't see any reason not to be excited. I mean, you have no COVID outbreaks, at least through your big names. The stars people are going to want to tune in to watch. They all seem like they're going to play this weekend, minus a few with lingering other injuries. But to this point, it seems like with a lack of a plan, the teams have managed to keep it together on their own, and I'm ready, man. Get me going.
And that's another thing too. Is I'll give the NFL teams credit here because the report was out today. Only 1 positive this week. In the last month, there's only been 5 positives as it comes to players, and all have seemed to have recovered. And that's been the thing we talk about. Like, will the season start? And if it starts, will it finish? That's kind of been the big question too. We've seen baseball kind of maybe finally get their shit together. Players kind of policing themselves and not, going to casinos and going to strip clubs and things like that, and putting themselves into situations. Again, the hockey and basketball, they've been in a bubble, so they've been able to. NHL yesterday was 6 straight weeks without 1 positive COVID test, which is impressive. The NFL, they like what we talked about, is going to be a lot harder to bubble. So they kind of have to be responsible for themselves, and so far they have been.
Right. And the major difference to this point is at no point has a team. They've done I think they did a couple scrimmages this week, but I don't know if that was just within teams on their own facility. But we haven't had all the traveling yet, and I think the big fear with going to stadium, especially if some have fans in them, what's that scenario like? What's the virus act like inside a dome? Like, is that it's a larger space, but there's more people. So it's like how logistic is it for it to travel down to the field, hit a player, land on a cameraman? I don't know how the virus spreads. 100%.
Maybe they'll put plexiglass, because I know the WWE did this when they had fans at their training center. Not just they had the barricades, but they also had plexiglass.
Well, that would be an interesting thing.
So maybe you do that. So the fans can spread it to themselves, but they don't spread it.
You guys, the riffraff, are on your own. You guys aren't worth near the money.
You guys make your own choices. You want to come to the games, you put yourself at risk.
Yeah, because you better believe it. If I'm the Arizona Cardinals and I just unloaded all that money onto DeAndre Hopkins, the last thing I want is him getting breathed on by 15,000 people in Atlanta or New Orleans. You know what I mean? So I don't think that's, and
is it going to be better in, southern states with a dome versus Minnesota, where flu season probably starts last week?
Right. And then they're coming inside and bringing all their sneezes and sniffles. I don't know. Whatever it is, I'm excited. I think there is a big risk.
The question, Sean, is: do you think that the NFL starting this week. We know that. We've gotten there. Will the NFL season finish as scheduled, or will they have to pause it, restart later or something like that? Do you think the NFL season will finish on time?
Well, I think if there's anything that this has proven to me, is that the NFL at the very least will pause and resume. That would be the end all. I don't think there's a point where they're calling the season. I think, if anything, if you start to see cases rise, Goodell's going to up the number of practice team players to get reserves in essentially a team bubble. I'd like to see him put that in place where at the very least, like, your reserves can't go anywhere, which is asking a lot from guys that aren't getting to play on Sunday. But I don't know. I mean, I think if you're going to compare it to anything, you got to compare it to Major League Baseball, because that's the other sport that has done the traveling, and you've seen teams get shut down, and it's done horrific things to the schedule where one team's not playing for 2 weeks and another one's not playing for a week and a half, and you got to kind of shuffle these games around and play double headers. Well, you don't have that option in the NFL. You can't make up games on a Wednesday and then ask both teams to play again on Sunday. It doesn't work. So I think, at any point it gets that bad, you're going to have to suspend, but teams are just going to have to be aware that if this is a money-making machine, you better have practice players up to speed, because there's a good chance you get 3 or 4 starters that get it, and you got to quarantine the guys that roomed with them or played with them, or you might be fielding a team full of bees the following week. So it could get pretty interesting. But I think college football is the one that I think
is in more trouble, I think. Because,
and I mean, the big thing for me is you can, in the NFL, you can be 15,000 tickets, cut off all the other cars, blah, 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 no tailgating, whatever you want to do. You have a lot more control over your facility. These colleges are playing on a college campus. And I don't know if you've ever been on a college campus, James.
I have.
It's very hard to tell those kids not to do something, because, I mean,
Right.
not me and you, we followed the rules entirely.
Oh, we were perfect
to a T, a really small T. But we, I mean, you're seeing it already. The kids went back to school. All these schools are closing because, campus party here, campus party there. We're out drinking in a field.
I saw a picture today of, I believe
These
it was
kids are not going to social distance on a college
sorority
campus.
house at the University of Georgia.
Yes.
And they had made a sign that said COVID positive, but at least we don't go to Auburn. So
I like that. I got to say, I completely agree with the
I love
spirit.
the spirit of the thing.
Yeah, it's right there. They're really firing on all cylinders, but doesn't mean you're not stupid. You know what I mean? I can agree with the sentiment of the confidence to take a bull on head on, but it doesn't mean I'm getting in the ring with one.
Right, the running of the bulls. I mean, that takes balls, but it's not smart.
It's not a smart play. That bull's easily 5, 6, 7 times your size. It's gonna hit it once you dead. Yeah.
I will say this about the COVID positives to date that have been in, at least with college athletes, college football athletes, there has not been one hospitalization,
which
so they've all been able to recover. So that is a good thing, but in terms of the potential to shut teams down, not a good thing.
So I think, unless colleges are really going to make an effort to keep kids funneled away, because, I mean, you can tell, I'm going looking back at that 18 to 21 kind of age bracket, and they say, well, there's no tickets to the games, no fans, no students allowed. I'm going to try to, drink and party as close to that stadium as I can. I'm going to play music.
Go to a house in town and you party there while the game's on.
Yeah.
You put a TV outside and you have a keg.
You're closer to downtown to burn the town down.
Right. And I know South Bend, Notre Dame is kind of contained on its own monster, but you go to Ann Arbor, which, I mean, there's no Michigan games, but you go to Tuscaloosa, you go to Tallahassee, you go these towns, they're college towns. These kids,
if you tell the fraternity row at Alabama that they can't go to the game, they're just going to drink outside fraternity row.
Yeah. It's
hordes of thousands. Everyone that would have gone to that game is just going to go to the party.
Yeah.
And be an even closer space. So I just, it's not an age group that's very good for being responsible. It's not an age group that's very good for following directions or orders. So I don't think that the mass of college football fans and no shot at people from the South, but a little bit of a shot at people from the South from what I've seen. They also aren't very good at following directions.
I mean, you live in the South
what
now.
to do.
So.
I live down here. I watch people going, "You will die if you get within 6 feet of each other," and they'll be like, "Heck with that. Let's make out with that guy," and then everybody's got the virus. So,
and I mean, that's what I said from the beginning. And I'm not faulting any, the Big Ten and the Pac-12, that they're trying to play, they're trying to figure out. I'm not faulting them for wanting to play. High school athletes in Michigan are playing football. High school athletes in Ohio are playing. NFL athletes are playing in these states, and college can. I think the NCAA screwed up by going, it's up to you guys. But that's another tale in and of itself. It's just, I just know that when I was in college, not me. I knew a lot of people that, like, if you told them they can't do something like drink in the dorms because we're at a dry campus, guess what people did? Drank in the dorm. You can't do this. You can't tell a college athlete, college student what to do. And I know Brian Kelly on a press conference said, he called into Dan Patrick's show like a month ago, and he said, how are you managing this? He goes, well, we can only do so much. It's up to players to police themselves. Like, if you hear a guy talking in a team meeting or after practice, they're going to this party, you have to stand up and you have to say, hey man, if you do that, you're putting our season at risk, which, that's not happening in every locker room across the country. It just is. Like, at some place it might, even if it does, like, they're just going to buzz them up, be like, I don't care. I want to go drink. I want to go hang out with my friends. I want to do what college kids do. But anyway, so let's go, Sean. Let's make our NFL predictions for the season, and then we are going to do over-under win totals for the year. We'll go rapid fire on those.
Okay. I'm still with
you. All right, gotcha. So I'm going to give mine. I'm going to start in the NFC. I'm going to go the NFC East. I'm going to go Philadelphia Eagles. I know that much like last year, much like probably the last couple of years, it's a two-dog race. It's the Cowboys and it's the Eagles. The Cowboys, obviously, they added some pieces, whole new coaching staff. Thank God. But without having preseason, I don't know what this Cowboys team is. I know there's a lot of people high on them. I'm excited. Mike McCarthy announced yesterday that there is no full season captains. He's bringing the thing that he did in Green Bay. Weekly captains voted on by the team because he said take the team to win, not individual players. I love that. I absolutely love that. But I just don't know what the Cowboys are. So I think the Eagles, to me, are the favorite to win the division. NFC North, I like Minnesota. I think Green Bay is going to fall hard this year. I think the LaFleur, Aaron Rodgers experiment is going to continue to fall apart. I like Minnesota. The South, I think the South could end up being maybe the best division in the NFL. But I like the Saints to win that division. And then the 49ers, I think, are still the class of the NFC West. And now this year, 3 wild card teams. That was the part of the new CBA. Only the number 1 seed in each conference gets the bye. 3 wild card teams this year. So my first wild card team are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think Tom Brady and that offense they're putting together, even if they have half a defense, they're going to be in great shape down there in Tampa Bay. And I like the Cowboys as my number 2. I think the Cowboys easily are going to be a playoff team. They could potentially win the division, but they're going to make the playoffs. And then my number 3, I actually like the Chicago Bears. Like I said, I think the Packers are going to stumble. I think that the NFC West is just going to beat themselves up. And I like Mitch Trubisky, shockingly, to figure out his ass from a hole in the ground and put together a solid season. I like the Chicago Bears sneaking in as the 3rd wild card team in the NFC. So, Sean, we'll go to you with your NFC division and wild card picks first.
All right, I'm doing a little bit of editing because I had some mix-ins because yours are way too close to mine. So we're going to mix them up here a little bit. The East, I'm going to agree with you because the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't think it's going to be a thing. I know you were talking about that kind of team mentality in Dallas, and I think there's definitely a turn around the corner, but I just don't know if it's the corner. When you look at what those players are used to, and you look at the kind of players, the kind of press and media guys like Dak and Zeke have seemed to get. And I mean, I'm not going to try to say I know the guys personally, but I'm just saying what I see behavior-wise. That like no season-long captains, are they going to like that? Like, is it, are they going to just kind of go along with it, or is it like, wait, this was my show? Especially for a guy trying
being okay with it. Potentially Zeke,
right?
It might, but you don't know.
You don't know. And Amari Cooper, sometimes he's a team player, other times he's a diva. So I don't. You have a lot of personalities on the team, and Mike McCarthy historically does not like personalities, which makes it a strange career choice for him. But we'll
better
stick
than
with Philadelphia. Yeah,
better than the clapper.
No, anything's better than that. We'll but I'll take Philly, despite starting the season with middle of the pack kind of rubble at wide receiver, but we're going to fight through the first few games, and we're going to win the East. I'm going to roll with you in the North. I think Minnesota's I think it's pretty strong, strong division, at least on paper, but I think when the dust clears, I think there's going to be a pretty good gap between 1 and 2 there. And I really wanted to switch up my Tampa Bay, New Orleans, and have Tampa winning the South. But I too like New Orleans.
You're getting the fever down there, even though you're an Eagles fan. I feel like
the thing is, it's funny because the fans here on like hockey and now with the Rays are very, very overconfident. Now it's hard to be overconfident.
I bet last night with that 8-2 win with the Lightning was just unbelievable.
It was brutal in the morning on the way to school today. But yeah, they're pretty high on everything, and but I think they're afraid to be high on the Buccaneers as a fan base.
That's fair,
rightly so. But just because, and you know what, just because I also have San Francisco remaining on top of the West, because I have both going to the playoffs anyway, I'm going to take Tampa Bay to win the South, and I'm going to put New Orleans as my first wild card team. I still don't have my third wild card team written in. It's still bouncing around. The trouble with the NFC is this. Unlike the AFC, where it's like there's a couple more, I think, harder to pick divisions, I don't think there's as many middle-of-the-road teams in the AFC. I think there's a lot more parity. Right. And in the NFC, there's no room for error. If you're not going to win your division, that wild card, I think you're going to have, like, New Orleans as the number one wild card might only be 2 games better than 3 or 4 teams that don't get in.
Yeah, it's a tight window. Like, all 3 of your wild card teams might be 10-6.
Yeah. So I don't think you have a lot of room for error there. I'm going to take my second wild card team. I don't always like doing it, especially because they're coach, but I'm going to take the Seattle Seahawks here. I think with I think anytime Russell Wilson's at the helm, that's going to help. I think they've made some moves on defense to try to get back to where they used to be. And I think the signing of a guy like Josh Gordon and those things, when you're taking those kind of steps, it's like, we just got to win. They want to get back to where they were before some of these guys leave, and I'm going to go there. And my third wild card team, you mentioned Chicago. I think they have a shot. I'm not putting them in. I'm not putting Dallas in here because, F Dallas. And I think there's just too many teams. I mean, Dallas could easily be there. I don't think it's the one.
Hard.
I'm almost willing to put a third NFC South team and put the Falcons in here. I think the Falcons could be the third wild card.
I think the Falcons are going to rebound big.
But I think I'm gonna land here. I'm gonna go. Man, this is brutal. I'm gonna stay in the North, but I'm gonna go the other way. I'm gonna say that Chicago sputters when it counts. I guess not when it counts. They're gonna sputter early. I feel like Chicago's gonna have a little trouble getting the wheels going.
That team that surges, but
didn't have enough early. And I'm going to have Aaron Rodgers getting one last chance to prove himself. I'm going to take Green Bay here as my third wild card team. You're right. The LaFleur experiment is going to fail. They're not going to end up winning a title. But I think just Aaron Rodgers and the weapons around him. And I think kind of, the Aaron Jones early, but you're going to see a little A.J. Dillon late. And the defense, moderate at best, probably third or fourth in the NFC North as far as defensive ranking. But I think offensively they're going to have enough to get there, assuming everybody doesn't catch.
I know. There's a lot of people who think that if Green Bay
maybe everybody gets the virus, and the teams with no fans, like the Browns and everybody, maybe these, the teams from the desert like Arizona. I think Arizona is a sneaky one. I had them as a potential wild card.
Yeah, they're one to watch with DeAndre Hopkins.
And kind of like what's the next year of Kyler Murray? Yeah, if Kyler Murray and if Kenyon Drake stays healthy and Kyler Murray, he's got a lot of weapons to throw to. I don't know. I think you could see an air show out there in the desert, and they could easily replace Seattle as my second AFC West seed, NFC West seed.
But I know there's people that think that if the Green Bay really sputters, that Aaron Rodgers may be a trade deadline deal.
Oh,
it wouldn't surprise me because they did draft Love. They did draft Love in the first round this year, so they're obviously they're looking past Aaron Rodgers, whether it's this year, next year.
And I don't think. The big thing is that I think it's going to take a pretty heavy sputter for that to happen.
If they're 2-6 at the midway point, there's going to be a bubble. There's going to be a bubble team that's going to go.
I think the failing of Green Bay / moderate success is going to be a pretty even kind of scattering throughout the season. I think it's going to be a steady 600 to 700 ball, and hope for the best. Maybe they finish at that 10-6 mark. So for my wild card, I need that to not happen. Make it pretty interesting to see where he would land. But I think. Aaron's not going to want that call for the city of Green Bay. If they're at all competitive or have any semblance of a chance at the North, he's not going to want to go anywhere.
All right. So who, Sean, do you have coming out of the NFC as your NFC champion? I have Minnesota. Obviously you lose Stephon Diggs, but I think you gain a stronger team coming out of it. I know they were banged up a little bit defensively towards the end last year. And I think as good of a receiver as Stephon Diggs is, I think that this team becomes more of a unit this year. And I like Minnesota to be your NFC champion this year. Who is your NFC champion?
I'll give you a guess. I think Minnesota is going to be one of those teams to get through there. But I do think that I don't want to say the Eagles felt slighted last year with the mess of injuries they had throughout the season. And the success they were able to have despite those.
Sure.
I think they put a lot of pieces in play, and they realized that there was a lot of scenarios there where even down the wide receiver depth chart, if they'd have just had some speed and guys with hands, and they went after wide receivers, they were like, if these guys are going to start dropping like flies, we need a lot of flies. So they got him that. Now we have some holes in the offensive line, some guys that are out for the year or for a large chunk of it. And, hopefully, throughout the last few years, we luckily and unluckily we've had a chance to get guys ready. But I think the defense is ready to play. I think the Philadelphia Eagles are your NFC champion when it's all said and done, and are back to the Super Bowl for the second time in recent memory.
All right, let's jump over to the AFC. I have the Buffalo Bills as your AFC champion. I think with the changing of the guard in New England, it opens up a door that has been bolted shut for the last decade and a half. So I like Buffalo to build on what they were doing a year ago. They pick up the victory in the AFC East. I like the Ravens coming out of the North. I think that team's only going to get better this year. I think Lamar is going to be better. In the South, I like the Indianapolis Colts. I think Phillip Rivers. I think he's gonna. I really think he's gonna feel less pressure to be successful in Indy because he was drafted so high in San Diego / Los Angeles that there was always pressure to succeed. You had to bring a championship to that franchise. You had to get them back to the Super Bowl where they hadn't been since the early 90s. The Colts have had success, obviously, with Peyton Manning, with Andrew Luck. And I don't know that people are necessarily expecting them to be a Super Bowl champion, but I think with the pressure off, Phillip Rivers can throw the freaking football. and there's a lot of talent on that Colts team. If they can even play a quarter of a quality defense on that field, I think Indy's going to be solid. In the West, the Chiefs. I mean, come on, nothing else needs to be said there. My wild card teams in the AFC, I like the Texans, obviously, who have been near the top. They locked up Deshaun Watson for a few more years. They're going to be my first wild card. I like the Steelers to bounce back this year. If Ben Roethlisberger stay healthy, they've kind of put a few more pieces at the wide receiver position. I think that defense is going to be great. I think the Steelers are going to be a little bit more reminiscent of what people think of when they think of the Pittsburgh Steelers. But my number 3 wild card team, you didn't think we were going to get an NFL playoffs without that team from Foxborough, Cam Newton and the New England Patriots. And I know people are like, man, it's going to be a whole different thing. And it is going to be a whole different thing. You're not going to recognize these Patriots. New uniforms, new quarterback, new look. But a key thing to remember, Sean, is Josh McDaniel, the offensive coordinator there, was the coach in Denver, or at least the offensive coordinator, when Tim Tebow was in Denver, and they found success. So with a guy like Cam Newton, he can stay healthy. I like New England. I mean, the AFC's Miami. I know some people like Miami. I'm not too fond on. I think they're going to be better, but I don't. I
like Miami. I don't love Miami.
I don't think they're going to be a playoff team, and the Jets stink. So I think you're gonna find success. It's not going to be what we're used to. I think we're maybe an 8-8 team, but you might be able to sneak in the AFC playoffs at 8-8. So I like the Patriots as my number 3.
All right. Well, we got some overlaps. We got some differences. I also have Buffalo winning the East. Although I'm not gonna lie to you, I love Cam Newton, and I think he's a man possessed. He's a guy that kind of got, wins an MVP, gets hurt, never gets a chance to try to repeat that MVP success.
Sure.
And what better scenario to be in? And then, and the best case for him is he's in a situation where he's got a coach that's not going to put up with a mouth or an attitude. So not that he's necessarily had one, but if he had any semblance of like a me attitude,
I don't think we're going to see the same eccentric Cam Newton at press conferences and things like that. But now, will he still be able to have a personality? I think so.
Yeah,
but it's not going to be what it was in Carolina.
Right. Well, when they had that signing, it was the whole mystery of like, well, is he going to be our starter? And like, we love this other guy and blah, blah. That signing, there was no way that Cam Newton signing was anything but a Cam.
He was not going to be the backup.
Yeah, no, you're not signing a former MVP to like back up some unproven rookie or second-year player. It's just not going to happen.
Right.
But I have Buffalo. I have Baltimore. It's hard to pick against Baltimore in anything right now. Now in my South, I differ. My South, I have Houston. You had them as a wild card. I have them winning the South. I think Deshaun Watson, like you said, got the money. Sometimes that's a downfall. I don't think it is for Deshaun Watson. I think he's too talented. Losing DeAndre Hopkins, I'm sure, is going to affect things a skosh. He's a hard guy to replace. But they signed a Randall Cobb that's essentially the same guy. And, plug him in.
Basically the same guy.
Basically same player. But you have a David Johnson. He can dump the ball off a lot more. He can take some chances down the field because you got him. Hopefully that works out.
If Will Fuller
is
healthy.
David and Duke Johnson. In the West, it was funny because I was trying to scroll through the players, the teams in the West earlier when I was filling this sheet out, and I had written Denver, forgetting that the Chiefs were in the West. And then I was like, oh, yeah, there's that Mahomes guy and my man Andy Reid.
He's pretty good.
Yeah, they're all pretty okay. So yeah, I got Kansas City with you. That's going to be a tough one to do. Now, I do have Denver in a wild card spot. I have them in my second wild card technically. Behind Indianapolis, I have the Colts. I kind of am on, that Phillip Rivers bandwagon with you. With that, and I fought hard to try to get New England out of here with you. I really did. I'm like, I had Cleveland penciled in. I had Miami penciled in. I had Las Vegas penciled in. I could see any of those doing it.
How cool is that stadium in Vegas, by the
No,
way?
it's dope. It's like a giant video game system. Is what it looks
And
like.
much like the Cowboys, if there's a stadium in the AFC that's probably going to be at full capacity, it's Vegas.
It's
Because
probably Vegas.
casinos are probably at full capacity as it is, so who gives a shit?
Casinos have been open since April, but yeah, I want to put Vegas in there. I think they're kind of a sneaky pick and could replace Denver in this mix. You know, they could be that second West team. But there's too many question marks. I think Denver's got a good defense, so I put them in. But I got New England as my third wild card as well. And coming out of the AFC all around, I guess to meet Philadelphia, would put it right down Route 95. I have Philly against Baltimore in my Super Bowl. I think, and it's going to take. I still haven't written who's winning that game yet. I can in a moment.
I have mine. I have the Chiefs coming out of the AFC, similar to the Clemson in college football. Until you can prove to me that you can beat them, I refuse to believe that they can actually be beaten. I mean, you're talking about a Chiefs team that was beaten for 3 quarters in multiple playoff games last year, and they won the Super Bowl. So
it was hard to pick against Kansas City, especially with Big Red out there.
But you know, it was on the Herd yesterday. They were talking, and there's a great point. If you know, the Titans had the Chiefs dead to rights in the third quarter. You know, other team had the Chiefs dead to rights in the playoffs. So if you can figure out, you're not gonna stop Mahomes. You're not gonna stop Mahomes. You're not gonna totally.
No, that's incorrect. You're gonna stop Mahomes for the first so many minutes.
Right. You got to figure out how to just get that last piece.
Yeah.
That last piece. So, and maybe Tennessee, you know, I don't have Tennessee in my playoffs because I think they're going to, they're going to be close. They're going to be good. I like Vrabel and I like that team, but I think there's going to be a little bit of a hangover from last year because they went so much further than they expected.
You know, and I have Houston and Indianapolis in. I could easily see it being Tennessee and Indianapolis, Houston and Tennessee. But I don't see 3 teams coming out of that division.
No. But to me, it's the Chiefs. I have them winning the Super Bowl. I have Mahomes as my league MVP. Like, you know, it just, I mean, the guy, like, he's the highest paid player in NFL history, and he is worth every penny, probably more.
James, he's got engaged. He's got the Super Bowl. He's got the money. Andy Reid finally found a way to not beat himself. And if you want to know the secret to beating Andy Reid, it's just wait. Just wait.
Let him start working the clock.
Andy will coach himself out of the cardboard box and then coach himself right back into it.
He didn't have the opportunity to do that last year because they got so far behind.
That he had no choice but to coach out.
If the Chiefs get if they get out to a lead in a playoff game, dead. I don't care if it's first round against the New England, dead. If it's first round against the Texans, dead. First round against Steelers, dead. If they get a lead, they're in trouble. They're in big trouble. But Sean, who's your Super Bowl champion and your league MVP?
All right, I got right down Route 95, Philly, Baltimore. It took everything not to do, but I picked Philly, Kansas City last year. So I didn't want to do it a second year, but I got Philly, Baltimore, and in a close Super Bowl, I have Philadelphia winning the Battle of I-95 for their second Super Bowl championship. MVP, man, it's hard not to pick Lamar Jackson. Like, I still think,
if they're going to be that good,
like, it's going to be real hard. But ironically, I think the quarterback of either of those 2 teams in my Super Bowl could be the MVP. I'd love to see it be Carson Wentz. Now, do they vote after?
No, I think the league MVP is regular season only.
Right. But my question is, do they? No, I know. I think we knew it was Lamar before the Super Bowl was over. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm going to go Lamar Jackson back-to-back MVPs. I want to pick Carson Wentz there. I think it'd be awesome to have him as one. I think Lamar Jackson wins your regular season MVP. Because of that, maybe a bit overconfident in the Super Bowl. Carson Wentz, Super Bowl MVP.
All right. And then let's look before we get to the over/under for win totals. Let's look ahead to next spring, hopefully in Vegas and not in Roger Goodell's basement for the 2021 NFL Draft. Who, Sean, to you is the number one pick? I have the Carolina Panthers. I think they are in full rebuild mode.
Was Byron Leftwich down there?
Luke Kuechly's gone.
Teddy Bridgewater. Feels like a Byron Leftwich.
Bridgewater's your quarterback. You have Matt Rule, who may end up being a great coach, but he's, he went from Temple to Baylor to Carolina in like 3.5 years. Like, he may end up being great. He signed a 7-year deal. I think he has a great football mind. But outside of Christian McCaffrey, I think this team is just dumpster. I think that I know like the Jaguars look like they're in tank mode, but I think Carolina is going to be worse than Jacksonville. So I have the Carolina Panthers as my 2021 number one pick.
Well, I got a handful of teams that could easily be down there. I could see the Browns continuing to fall, but they should have enough talent not to. But I got Jacksonville listed there. I have the Chargers listed here as real bad.
Chargers could be bad.
New York shouldn't be. The Giants. The Jets could be.
Giants shouldn't be.
And, all these teams could be absolute garbage at any time. But I'm going to go with the same garbage team that I pick every year. Primarily because this year they don't even have a name. I'm going to take the Washington football team as the worst team in football. And I'm going to have them drafting. I'm going to say it's a failed experiment. Well, whoever ends up down there is going to be considered a failed quarterback experiment. I think Lawrence is your number one pick for that team.
Wow. Okay. All right. All right, and now let's move on here, Sean. I pulled this from OddsShark yesterday for the over/under in terms of win totals. We'll go team by team, rapid fire. If you want to give any thoughts on a specific team, you can do that.
Simple over/under.
Yeah, Arizona 7.5 wins. I have them at under. I just, like Kyler Murray, he's got to show me a little bit more. Hopefully he's got the chemistry with DeAndre Hopkins, but I'm going to go under.
Over.
Arizona. Over for you?
Yep.
Atlanta Falcons 7.5. I have under, even though I think they can be improved. I think they're gonna stumble early. 7.5 Atlanta.
Well, my answer is going to help your pick for Carolina with the first pick. Over.
Okay. Baltimore 11.5. Now I had written down under, but I'm gonna change it. I'm gonna change it 11th hour. I'm gonna go over Baltimore 11.5.
Well, he's my MVP. I got to go over.
That's a smart play. Buffalo 9. I'm gonna go slight over.
Yes, I'm with you. Barely over.
Carolina 5.5. I'm going to go under. I think Carolina is going to be an absolute dumpster fire. I think they're in what again, and I go back to this. NFC South could be the best division in football this year. So you're playing 6 games against them, and then you gotta win 10 others. You gotta play 10 other games. Carolina is going to win 4 at best if it's a good year. Carolina under.
So you have. I think McCaffrey's good enough to win at least 2 on his own, maybe 3. And I think Teddy Bridgewater is better than people think he is. He got a pretty good receiving core, despite what you seem to think about it. And that defense has been mediocre, but like on the right side of mediocre. I'm going to take over. I've gone over on every pick, I think, to this point. I'm going to take over. Now, not everyone can go over.
Chicago 8.5. I have them making the playoffs, so I'm going to go over. Sean, you got under?
I got to take under somewhere. I'll bet against Chicago.
Cincinnati 5.5. I started writing down over, but I ultimately went under for Cincinnati.
Ride that burro over the mountain. Over.
Cleveland 8.5. I'm going to go over. I think Baker is going to be much improved this year. Over.
I got too high on them too fast. I had them in the playoffs last year. Underperformed. Under.
Yeah, see, I have them, at 8.5. I have them winning 9 games. It's the slightest of overs.
Sick.
Dallas Cowboys 9.5. I'm going to go over. Obviously,
Well, I have them not making the wild card, so I have them probably right around that 9.5 win. Can they actually win 9.5?
Well, they play
5,
Washington
9.
twice, so is like a win against Washington really a full win?
Under.
Under, okay. Denver 7.5 over. I like Denver to be a little bit improved this
I
year.
got them in the playoffs. They got to go over.
Detroit 6.5. I went under. Like, I mean, Stafford. If Stafford stays healthy, if Adrian Peterson works out, if they're
stays healthy, they could go 11-5 and win the North.
Yeah, they were good for a good for the first half of the year last year.
At one point,
and then Stafford blew up, and it all fell apart. But I think Matt Patricia is going to be fired mid-season, so I'm going under.
And it's what number 6.5?
6.5. Same go 6 and 10.
I got the Bears going under. I'll take the Lions over. Lions will win like 7.
Lions over. Green Bay 9. I went under because I have that thing blowing up.
Yeah, you had to go under. I just don't know how many Minnesota's going to win. I'm going to take Green Bay at the over. We'll put them at about 10-6, maybe 11-5 if the ball bounces the right way in late October.
Houston 7.5. I'm going over.
7.5. Yeah, that's over. I think that's of the ones I've heard so far. That to me feels like the best lock.
Easy, that's borderline. Lock it up. Indy 9. I have them winning the division, so I'm going over.
They could be in that wild card at 9.
Hey, are they a push? Because they're one of the few that's a flat number.
I'm gonna edit my other picks. I'm gonna take Indianapolis under, and I'm replacing them with Tennessee in the wild card. I've been back and forth since this morning. I'm taking Tennessee as my first wild card, not Indianapolis. Indianapolis is under.
All right. We were in Indy. Let's go to Jacksonville 4.5. I'm going to go the slightest of overs. Jacksonville's going to go 5-11.
Gutsy call. I do love Gardner Minshew. I'll take over with you.
There we go.
Gardner Minshew, ride that mustache to 5 wins.
Much like Baltimore, Kansas City 11.5. I'm going over with Kansas City as well.
Yeah, I'm probably going to go with you. I think that Jacksonville one, though, I think there's a good chance that Gardner Minshew, just like get rid of Foles, ride the Minshew train, is just a good attempt to get Trevor Lawrence.
It could that's a train with a penny.
Either Minshew works out and you win a lot of games while you're not paying a guy, and you sell a bunch of jerseys, and maybe you have your franchise quarterback, or you don't, and it blows up in your face, and then you just
get Trevor Lawrence.
Get Trevor Lawrence. Kansas City over.
The Las Vegas Raiders 7.5. I'm going over. I think they're going to win 9 games, maybe 10.
I don't think every team in the league can win 9 games. I feel like where we're balancing our overs and unders.
Yeah, I was thinking about that as I was going down the list, and I'm writing them down. I'm like, you know what? I
don't think it's mathematically possible for as many teams as I've said to go over.
Probably not, but like that just means that some of the ones that you're predicting are actually going to hit them.
That's right. Vegas over.
The Los Angeles Chargers 7.5 under.
Under.
They're going to be bad. They're going to be
my second finalist. It was Washington, Jets, or Chargers for the number 1 pick this year.
Like, obviously, 2020, COVID-19, pandemic, millions of people sick, thousands of people dead, horrible situation. This may be best case scenario for the Los Angeles Chargers because you have a giant stadium worth $1 billion. They weren't going to be able to put a lot of people in there. Now you don't even have to worry about that because the city of Los Angeles, like, you can't put people in a stadium. The Chargers
didn't know what's going on. They're like, yeah, we know. We're trying to get fans. And they're like, no, you actually can't.
They're like, Chargers, you can't put crowd in the stadium. Yeah,
and then they were like, oh, perfect.
We couldn't do it.
Tyrod Taylor as a starter, and when this blows up in our face, we'll draft Trevor Lawrence.
We couldn't put people in the crowd in Carson City. How the hell are we going to do it in Los Angeles?
The Tyrod Tayller experiment is also an attempt to get Trevor Lawrence in case
Yeah. It was Panthers or Chargers for me as my number 1 pick. Let's stay in Los Angeles. Los Angeles Rams 9. I'm taking the under on them. I think they are going to be the last place team in that division.
Take the under. I agree. I have them 4th in that division.
So actually, I'm gonna revert back. I'm gonna change my 7.5 Cardinals over to over, as opposed to an under.
Because you're taking the Rams under.
I'm taking the Rams under. Yes. Miami 6.5. Slightly over. They're gonna win 6.75 games. They can get
I'll
7.
I'll take the over because I almost had them finishing ahead of New England until I really thought about it.
Like, Tua is going to start at some point, right? There's no way Fitzpatrick is that starter for the whole year.
Fitzmagic, man. Fitzmagic, they're just going to win the East.
Can't
I
bet
almost
against
had him
the
riding Fitzmagic to the AFC East Championship.
Jesus. It's 2020, probably. Minnesota 9. I'm going over because I have them going all the way to Super Bowl.
I'll take over on Minnesota at 9.
New England 9. Over. They're going to win.
My last wild card.
I had Buffalo at over.
It's even 9?
Over. Even 9.
That's a push.
Are you going to push?
That's a push at 9 wins.
Push at 9 wins.
That's a gutsy call. I'm calling push at 9 wins.
New Orleans. Wait, where did I have? I had them winning the division. Oh yeah, I screwed up.
It's an over.
10.5. I'm changing mine to over. I wrote under. What was I thinking? Over for
Over.
New Orleans.
I have them winning that division as well.
The New York Giants 6.
Oh no, I have them finished second in that division. What was it? 10.5.
10.5.
So Tampa Bay would have to win like 13 games.
Yeah, their over unders at 9.5. We'll get to that in a second.
I'll still take over.
Okay, all right. The New York Giants 6.5 under. I think they're going to be bad. Not Washington bad, but they're going to be bad.
Yeah.
And at 6.5, I'm going to say they can win 6.
6 games.
5 or 6.
6, yeah, 6 and 10.
New York Jets 7 under.
Under, not even close.
Eagles 9.5 over.
Over.
49ers 10.5. I have over.
Over.
Seattle 9 over.
Is that your push?
That you know what? That's a push for me.
I'll take over. I have them in the playoffs.
All right, I changed mine to a push. Tampa Bay 9.5 over.
I have to take over.
You have to.
I almost had them beating Baltimore and going to beating Philadelphia and going, but then I realized I can't have Tom Brady beating the Eagles.
Tennessee 8.5. I'm changing mine. I had written over. I'm going under. I think they're going to have a hangover from last year. Tennessee.
And I had written under, but I'm going to switch it to over.
You got to switch it over because you haven't going to playoff.
Yeah.
And then finally, this may be one of the easier ones. Washington football team 5.5.
That, by the way, that's your Browns number from last year was 5.5.
Lock it up. That's a lock it up. That's a stone cold lock.
Washington,
Under.
lock it up.
Under 5.5.
Put a chain around it. Lock it up.
That one's easy.
Chain it right to Houston at over and throw them in a safe. Yep.
That one's real easy. And then finally, Sean, obviously, my Capitals never even cared about the bubble. Your Eagles had the heartbreak, or your Flyers had the heartbreak this past weekend in Game 7.
Heartbreak the only way Philadelphia does it, which is to get you to the brink of excitement
and then snatch it out,
and then just crap their pants, fall off the face of the planet.
Yeah, that was not a good Game 7.
You could have just lost in Game 5. I'd have been upset.
Right. Why'd you have to take it to 7 if you're going to
go to 7 and lose in overtime? Be like, okay, it was a heck of a game.
Yeah, maybe the Islanders are just that good. But we have our final four: Vegas, Dallas. Dallas, of course, winning Game 1, pretty convincing fashion. Right now, though, Vegas 3 goals in the second period. 1 even was waved off, so it could have been 4. Just kicking the teeth out of Dallas tonight. So unless Dallas really comes out firing, Vegas and Dallas is going to be at 1-1. The Tampa Bay Lightning, who were sitting idle for almost a week, it felt like, 8-2 over the New York Islanders last night. Islanders are going to bounce back tomorrow. There's no way that they're going to let that sit. But Tampa Bay finally looks like that team that they haven't been for the couple of years. Like, they were becoming the new Sharks. And when I say that, I mean they're the team that is great in the regular season, but ultimately they were never able to really put it together. And until they told me they could, I wasn't going to believe in them. Now maybe I'm starting to believe that this version of the Tampa Bay Lightning is actually really good. So looking at the Final Four, Vegas and Dallas in the West, Tampa Bay and New York Islanders in the East. Sean, who do you have advancing in this one? For me, despite losing Game 1 Dallas actually changed their goalie, so they're almost waving the white flag here for game number 2. I like Vegas to win this series. This one may go all the way to 7. These two teams are pretty damn close to each other. And then in the East, I'm still going to go the Islanders, despite what happened in game number 2 or game number 1. I like the Islanders. They remind me of a team. You can see the banner over my head here in 2018. Barry Trotz.
I feel like that banner gets smaller every year.
Well, it kind of does. I mean, my head gets bigger, I think is what it is.
That's what it is.
But Barry Trotz and that coaching staff, I know what that coaching staff can do. A loss in game 1 means nothing to them. I think they're going to bounce back tomorrow and start going. I think that series only goes 5 or 6 games. I don't think they're going to push it all the way to 7. So I like my Stanley Cup final to be Vegas and the Islanders.
I'm going to differ on you a little bit. I like Vegas in the West. I think Dallas is going to falter kind of quick here. I think they kind of got caught. Both teams came off game 7 wins. But I think Vegas just kind of got caught in a slip-up kind of series. I think if Colorado's goalie doesn't get hurt, I don't think Dallas ever gets out of that series. And I think Dallas has made it as far as they're going to. I have Vegas winning that one a little earlier than you, probably about game 5 or 6. I'm not going to have it going 7. And unlike a lot of these Flyers fans that seem to think like, oh, you beat us, I hope Tampa Bay kills you. I have no problem with the team that beats us going and winning the whole thing. I feel like that series with the Flyers may have taken enough out of the sails. I think a little extra games, and I think that rest is going to come into play. I think Tampa comes out and wins the first couple, and then the Islanders scrap back into it, kind of like the Flyers did, but ultimately run out of gas, and Tampa takes it late, game 6 or 7. So I got Tampa against Las Vegas, and then I have Las Vegas beating Tampa.
Yeah, I mean, Vegas was my Stanley Cup champion from the beginning when we put the brackets together. So I'm not going to sway off of them as long as they're still in the damn thing. So I'm going to continue with Vegas beating the Islanders in the Stanley Cup Finals. So Sean, do you have anything else that you want to hit on here before we close this thing out?
Well, I mean, all I got to say is I don't know how this stacks up to the most exciting moments in sports seasons, but it's a pretty exciting, rare time. You get to watch the Stanley Cup Finals. You get to watch this dawn of the NFL season, and you get to watch the kind of fade into the tail end of Major League Baseball, and I think that's pretty darn exciting. You can follow me following it at Sean Shine State on Twitter from St. Petersburg.
And you can follow me at Big Jim Sports. Make sure you're following the show. We are now on YouTube. We are now on Instagram. So if you go to tinyurl.3 I'm thinking of Thursday night, tinyurl.com/huddleuppod YouTube. If you go to at Huddle Up Podcast or Huddle Up Pod on Instagram, Huddle Up Podcast, Facebook, and Twitter is where you can find us. And honestly, if you go to any of our social media pages, we have the link tree. Just click on that. That has every single link related to what we are doing. So make sure you check us out there. And make sure you check out our home network, NGSC Sports. So subscribe to the podcast. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, give us a rate and review. Hey, enjoy the first week of football, college, NFL this weekend. Don't know how long it's going to last. But while it's here, let's enjoy it. So until next time, stay safe, stay smart, and go for the win.